KLTV soundcheck, KLTV soundcheck.
If you'd like to join me for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple things this morning that are, you'll notice Commissioner Weber, he's over in Montana this week. After I run through approval of minutes, we are going to take it. We don't usually like to do this on a Tuesday, but it's coming. We need to have an executive session. So after minutes, we will adjourn for an executive session, hopefully not too long, and then be back. And like I said, that's an unusual thing. We try not to do that on Tuesdays, but okay, for review of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any comments, corrections? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we'll adjourn to an executive session for litigation. You got any time frame? I'm thinking we'll start at 15 minutes. Okay. And then we'll be back. Okay, back from executive session, we were briefed on a litigation matter. No decisions were made. And I thank you for your patience. Like I said, we try not to schedule those on Tuesday. This one, we didn't have a choice, so. I'll run through consent agenda. Call for hearings. We have a proposed amendment to 2024 budget scheduled for July 2nd. I think we do these amendments every so often, yeah. Agreements, contracts, bid awards, recorded warranty deed and temporary easement for right-of-way purpose, and this is in reference to our South Cloverdale alignment project. Amendment to professional services agreement with Engineering Solutions for, we use them up at our landfill for gas engineering services. And we're extending that out to December 31st of 2024. They're working on a project for us up there. Contract completion letter to Queeg Brothers for the Ostrander Road Culvert Replacement Project, which was roughly a $2.7 million project. Contract execution with Pile Contractors, Inc. They won the bid for the Hazeldale Slide Repair Project. That'll be a project in the amount of $847,550. Through the lodging sales tax funds, agreement with the Laluska Foundation for a tourism grant to support the cost of restoration work on their ceremonial house. The total grant from, we call it LTAC, the lodging tax funds, was $42,000. And a signed amendment, the end of March, the commissioners gave me authority to sign an amendment to the Department of Commerce Community Development Block Grant, which is a direct grant to Lower Columbia CAP for Meals on Wheels. Last year it was 67,000. This year it's 66. And then we had vouchers in the amount of $1,399,591.10. Questions, comments on consent agenda? Really?
I'm trying to mend my ways.
Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Now, that's where the trouble starts.
Yeah, I know it.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda as has been presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We have one motion item, and I think Susan's online. There she is. Motion item for Public Works.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. We have for you today a resolution for the Burma Road Toutle Park Bypass Project to set up the project number for engineering and construction. The estimated amount is $790,000. This currently will be coming from the road fund. We are looking to see if there is any other funding out there. This would create a new road from the end of Burma Road to the approximately the gun range to provide an alternate access in case we do lose Toutle Park.
Could you tell us, is $790K the full expected price?
Yes.
Okay. And the timetable and all that?
So as soon as we get off of this and the project is approved, I have a draft scope from our drone survey company, and we've been reaching out to the residents so that they can start the survey in the next couple of weeks. Then as soon as that's done, the office will start working on design, permitting, and right-of-way. We want to have the design in place as quickly as possible and then work through the other items and the final funding. But we want to have the design done as close as possible in case something does happen this winter, so we have something in place. But I do not anticipate the actual construction occurring until next summer unless something does happen to that roadway.
The way things are going, 790K this year is different than 790K next year. Your thoughts?
I'm hoping we could keep it at that 790 next year. We could put a little bit of contingency in the numbers when we were rounding that, when we were creating them. So the hope is that the cost will not inflate by much.
And then another issue, the citizenry is really going to be pretty nervous about a drone flying over what might be their property at the time. Have we used this technique that you mentioned? Have we used it before?
For not on a roadway, we have used it before at the Cook Ferry site and at the landfill site. That is why we are contacting all the neighbors, anybody that's in that vicinity prior to this occurring, and giving them our schedule so that they're not as concerned, because we're trying to tie down where things are, their fences, get a good topo survey, and so we can site this properly and give them a fair appraisal and price when we go down that road.
So from the drone overflight, what things will you learn that will factor into the design?
So we will learn the topography. We will learn the location of buildings, fences. There is, we're calling it the infamous dip along this parcel. So we'll, along this proposed route. So we'll find out the depth of that so that we can do a proper design.
So compared to a method where you send a chain gang out there, this is just as accurate?
If we can remove anything so that will throw the level off, it is accurate within 2 inches.
And it's tied into all the property lines, so you know exactly whose easement you're gonna need or not need.
Correct. We, when you do these, a crew does go out and surveys where the monuments are, the property corner monuments, and puts in a couple control points that they survey in so that everything is to the appropriate datum.
I gotta admit, I like this stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry to disagree with you. I know that area. I used to ride my horses out there. I believe that there are too few homes to justify the amount of money that you're going to spend. And also that the proposed route would be plagued by the constant change of the river that follows that route. I think you would be it's a black hole for money. I disagree that you should go with that. Thank you.
Well, I'll give you a little history. If people at Tootle Road runs out to the gun range, and the Cowlitz River runs beside it there, or the Tootle or whatever that's coming in, and it's eroded away probably 100 feet of a person's property, and we're probably within, I'd say, 40 feet to Tootle Road. And we had 2 options to look at, trying to shore up that bank, if we can get federal approval to shore up the bank and keep the erosion from happening more and try and save that road, or bring another route in. To shore up the bank, the way the erosion is happening, we have one more good weather event, and even over summer, as the sand dries out, it could erode away. That road could be gone, and then there's no access to the homeowners there. We tried to come up at the end of Burma and get an easement through with Weyerhaeuser to come through, and Weyerhaeuser wasn't acceptable to that. So we're using what we have to try and make sure these homeowners have access before the road's gone and they can't get there.
Okay, I understand that viewpoint. However, I have lived there a long time and I have watched that you are going to have, if there's any storm or any weather fluctuation and that changes that river, that route that's planned from that she's mentioned is going to take a lot of county money to maintain it and to keep it viable as well, because it's going to erode as well. I think you're going to be in the long term, it's going to cost you less money to maintain by those houses than to do that whole route that you're mentioning. You might look into that because that river has changed up there as well. Sorry, it's just that I've been riding that with my horses for many, many years and I've seen the change.
So you're the cause of the pounding and the erosion?
Yes, the river has changed quite a bit and it's gotten,
So the route you're looking at comes through river? I've been back through there. I don't recognize any water back in
Okay.
there, but I could be wrong.
I think the issue that you're trying to say is that, so you save the day to day, but tomorrow you still have the same problem of the.
I believe so.
Of the erosion, and so.
It's going to be maybe in a different place, but it's the route that's proposed will be damaged by any erosion that comes at a later date as well. And yes, there is. I mean, you're coming off of what? Burma, but you're going back into
Burma
Tower.
follows the I-5,
Correct.
follows I-5, and then it goes up and you go into Weyerhaeuser, and Weyerhaeuser wouldn't let us do an easement over there. And Weyerhaeuser, Burma goes this way, Tootle goes this way, and in between is Paradise Point RV Park, everybody knows. And then a bunch of houses up in there, and they're trying to get to the end of Burma into County Road and then come down across the
Okay, it
land
might
that
not be
way.
in the place that I have in mind because the road, the usage that I've ridden has gone from there all the way up to Tower that I've ridden. And so off of Tower. Well, anyways, okay. If you've got a different, if you've got a different area than in mind, then okay, then
You have to cross
I'd like
the
to see
river
it.
get the tower.
Pardon?
You have to cross the river to get to the tower. Now,
Correct.
across the river, we do own that too, and you could get the tower from there.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
So was there anything you could add to that, Susan?
So, the route we're proposing is quite a bit further north than, where she is looking. I was trying to find my map so I could share it up on the screen, and I cannot find that little draft that I shared with you guys that showed my highlighter line where we're gonna put it. And I just can't find it. That's what I was looking for real quick. Because this is right at the south property line of the Weyerhaeuser property.
So I think her typical, her concerns at a high level, you've looked at it in detail. It's not like you just came up with the first option.
No, if the river makes it that far, we're not only losing the county road, we're losing quite a few homes between there and where this new route is, including potential damage to the gun range, the shooting range up there.
Yeah, I think for me, if we want to stabilize that, doing this isn't going to stabilize it, but to stabilize it today is not possible because of nothing else, bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy cost.
And the cost were probably, I think the estimates I see was well over $1 million, maybe close to 2 million.
Mhm.
Put the rock walls and stuff, and that's even if you can get permit to do it.
But we don't think we can get a permit in any reasonable amount of time, right?
No, the other day, Department of Ecology was in and we chatted with them, and they're going to help us with a little bit of it. And they have a meeting set. They're trying to get a meeting set with the Army Corps on the 8th of July, and I've been invited down to that. So it's not like we're going to stop trying. I just don't know that you could get that done before something happens to the road, and then you're in emergency mode
Yeah.
and doing all kinds of stuff.
Other than the 790,000, I hope people don't misunderstand this. Is there a downside to proceeding with the plan? I mean, are there unintended consequences we can think about trying to put through this, through the bypass? I can't think of any.
I, how
Other
many
than the money.
houses does it affect? Because most of the houses still would have access off of Tootle up to the point where it would wash out. So you're probably, what are you having, 3 or so houses?
It looks like 3, potentially 4, and the gun range,
And the gun.
depending
so
where it goes.
I don't think it adds a lot of traffic to Burma. Most of the homes are lower on Tootle will still be able to access.
Yeah.
I don't see a whole lot of downside, but then, you know, as you get into it, things can pop up. I'm not going to say things can't because they
Well,
do.
I mean, the reasonable question at this point would be to ask, if you're going to spend $790 for a temporary solution, and you say a more permanent solution is $2 million, should we be spending the $2 million now? And the answer, I think, is we probably can't get it built in time to prevent the loss of the road.
And I think that's a good conversation to have. If we were confident that we could get approval to fix that and say, I don't know, you might end up on the side, let's fix what we have and not disturb the other.
And that's tangled up with the dredging of the river too,
That's
isn't it?
tangled up with dredging and the Army Corps and the congressional mandate of what the Army Corps can do. It's just a lot of stuff.
I guess I'm wondering if anybody's, I know the permit process, and I sure hate to see, it seems like you're accepting the responsibility that you need to do something to keep access to those houses. And assuming you're going to be responsible for that, I guess, has anybody talked to a hydraulics engineer or somebody? I mentioned the wing dams before, something that would even on a temporary basis, you could put in there. It stuns me that you recognize that there's a need there, but we're going to wait on the bureaucracy to see if somebody can approve it for us. And I hate to say, you know, yeah, what's the word, Dale? Beg forgiveness later. But the homeowners, I know they want the protection and you're accepting the responsibility to do it. I don't know that I wouldn't just jump on finding a hydraulics engineer and find out what the options are besides the 2 that you're looking at. Just a thought.
Well, yeah, we did have them out there and they talked about a rock wall. They gave us a solution for it. It's just expensive and permit process. If it wanted to beg for forgiveness, it's an easy fix. If you want to beg for forgiveness, if you look across that area to the other side where we own the property, you can see the old route of the river, a little bit of dynamite and the push of the button and the river's rerouted and your problem's gone. But I can't get one of these guys to push the button. One of the short timers to push the button.
He was pressing so hard that this other one's in Montana.
I don't disagree with you on most of those points, Steve. I think there is an easy fix. It comes with some consequences,
But I think yours is a really good question. At what point do we shoot ourselves? I mean, a legal system and a government system shouldn't require you to commit suicide. And there are many forms of suicide, including economic suicide. How much does a bunch of dynamite cost?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I look at this from the perspective that the federal government has a responsibility to protect our borders and the citizens, consequently, the citizens within those borders. If you accept the responsibility of trying to help these people and keep that road so that they have access to those facilities, the gun range and their houses, I don't know that I agree with waiting for the federal government to give us permission to move forward and do those things. And I hate to see you spend $750,000 on maybe we need this when if you put that, that's half the cost roughly that you're talking about, maybe $2 million to put the rock wall in there. I don't know, just thought.
Well, I'll send the phone calls your way.
Okay.
So Susan, tell me the timeliness of this, if, what are the steps? Like if we approve this today and there's been a new information appears on our lap in a month and a half or some time frame that would suggest we don't need to do this, how does that impact our plans? In other words, we're not
Sorry,
paying out 790K today, right?
Correct. We're paying for the survey and the design work at this time. So we're looking at, if it's 2 months from now, we'll have spent 20,000, 25,000 to do the survey and start the design work. We will not have, purchased any property or, or laid any groundwork out there. So the ground would still be disturbed. Nobody would have sold us any property. And we would just have a survey that we'd have sitting on our shelf.
And even when we buy the property, we always buy it at fair market value, right? So it's
Correct.
not like you spent the money and you won't see it again.
Right.
I don't know if that helps. It just means it's not a ultimate decision. Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if you'd like a motion.
Sure.
I move that we approve the resolution for Burma Road Tootle Park bypass as has been discussed.
Okay, we have a motion. Other chance for other comments and stuff? Okay, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That's a tough area out there. Tomorrow in our 2:30 workshop, it looks like we have animal control code. I don't know exactly what that's all about. I know since the sheriff's office and the local police jurisdictions have taken over animal control, I know if you talk to the chief in Longview and other places, I know there's been some issues and they have some concerns. So I'm assuming it'll kind of touch on that. And then our quarterly update on ARPA funds. The next Wednesday, we're canceled for Juneteenth. I could comment on that, but I'll just leave it there. The 26th, we have Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board in. We had a conversation one day that got on salmon recovery, I think with the culverts and stuff. And so we scheduled the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board because there's a lot of questions on that. And a fellow by the name of Robert Sudar will come in and address some of those questions. So that might be a good one.
Yeah, he's a great speaker. He's been involved in this thing for a long time and he's not a shallow investigator. He goes in full depth on these issues.
Yeah.
Not bad when you're in the river, going to full depth.
Yeah. Okay, with that, it's open to the public. Might, not seeing any, I might give a little plug to my community. I was out at Castle Rock Council last night and they were handing out, I think they do a pretty good job, and I don't know what the gals call themselves. They have names for themselves, but they go around and they do a lot of projects to beautify and to develop the history of the city. And last night they put together a walking map that just shows the history of the town and what the old buildings were and stuff. And it's interesting. I give them for a little community. I think they do pretty well with that. And they're working on a kiosk similar to what we It's not the Monticello Convention, but a similar type kiosk that shows the history of Castle Rock. So just a plug to the city. Other than that,
Seems like we ought to take this opportunity to hear issues. I'm always at a loss for like a miscellaneous item of importance, but I'm also always thinking, wouldn't it be nice if the OPMA, the Open Public Meetings Act, had a rational interpretation? The way that Open Public Meetings Act means that any government organization, if a quorum of people are meeting without an official award, an official announcement, then that is a violation of the OPMA. And clearly the motivation behind OPMA is not to have backdoor deals where certainly a group of board members can collude to do something that the public would not approve of. That, the OPMA doesn't really materially prevent that. Open Public Meetings Act. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought I said that, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Oh. And so that just means that the people that are making decisions on your behalf have limited ability to talk to each other. And I don't know about you, but I always have an idea. And then there's the data and other ideas, but I don't get those because I'm not allowed to talk.
Yeah.
So how can we come up with a decent solution on your behalf? Now, I think we ought to, my solution would be any decision we make that involves a contract, money, any of that kind of thing, an ordinance has to be done in the public view. And any violation of that, I think, should be handled with extreme harshness. But we've gotten away from harsh anything these days.
yeah. You know, it gets to the point, like all three of us attended the Monticello celebration over there. And so when that happens, Kelly gets to attend those things too. Make sure two of us aren't sneaking off behind a tree and making secret deal, I guess. I don't know. So
Except, and if we do, it'll be with her.
yeah, she has to be involved.
You see
It's-
what I mean? Yeah.
And I agree with my colleague. It gets to the point of ridiculous because you hear at times they and not so much anymore, but at times they'll say, "Man, you guys are you don't get along," or "There's a lot of anger," or whatever. And I said, "Well, it's I don't really see it any different than private enterprise. In private enterprise, I didn't always agree with people, but we usually hashed it out in a room and then came out and it was different. We have to hash it out right up here. It's not like Monday afternoon, we're sitting back there going, said, this is on the agenda for Tuesday. We gotta, what do you guys think? No, it all gets hashed out right in front of you. So at times it seems harsher than I think it's ever intended to be. It's not going to be that we always agree anyways, but
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Before I came on the commission, I think I saw in a period of several years, only 2 votes that were not 3-0. It was 2-1. And that puzzled the heck out of me in view of OPMA. How does that get done? Well, we had the equivalent of the meetings that we now have here that the public gets to see. We had them in the room back here, and the public was always allowed to attend. But if you did try to attend, and I did a couple of times, you just feel like they don't want you here. And that was a time when things weren't recorded anyhow. Now everything we do that is open to the public is recorded. I think that's okay. That's a good thing. In terms of transparency, I've asked IT, but I think that's too much of a thing to ask of IT. Essentially, my email account here ought to be open to the public. That is to say, the public should be able to go on the county website and say, I want to see Aaron Mortensen's email account, and it should look to you just like it would look to me, except that while I can send and delete mails and all that, you can't. You can just take a look at them. Why that's important is for transparency, but it's also will help us separate out issues that we currently have statutorily obligations to retain documents for some number of years, and it's actually a big deal. I forget what the numbers of emails that we have saved over centuries. Well, okay, I'm exaggerating a little, but I think you get the picture. The check the box OPMA and PRR doesn't really help transparency as much as it should. Everything can be played with. There was a meeting where I texted Kelly, I think it was a Tuesday meeting. There was a name of an individual, and the name was an androgynous name, and the flyer that we put out, the agenda, had the wrong pronoun. So I texted to her the right pronoun, and guess what I got when I got back to my desk? A public records request. What was Mortensen sending text to, or something like that? And I'm like, the invasion of privacy for an elected individual is not a pleasant thing. You cannot legislate morality, you better elect morality.
Yeah, exactly.
As I tried to give somebody an opportunity, like Abby, do you want to talk to us?
I can give you, at the risk of boring you to death, a couple things that we just continue to work on in the background, and I'm not, we're hoping we can come to some solutions on them, but I don't know that you're going to get there because it's a lot of costs, a lot of different things involved, but we have issues with Hall of Justice. We're working with USDA and just looking at different options, what to do with that building, whether you can practically remodel or if you should find a location for a more of a campus type thing. It's a very expensive proposition either way, and it's not anything that I think we could do as a county ourselves. So we've I met with USDA back in Washington, DC, and they've been working with us continuously to try and see what kind of options we can do with the Hall of Justice. I just bring that up because this is a building we're starting to have some real issues with. We spent one summer, we spent $1 million, just under $1 million, just to keep it cool with auxiliary units. It's a building that's very hard to keep up with, and we're going to spend just millions of dollars one way or the other. So that's kind of a process that's being worked through and seeing what we can do with that. The other is excess room at the juvenile center. We're working with a design firm that we use on other projects, and we're just looking to see if it's feasible to take some of the extra space and convert it to adolescent drug rehab or adolescent mental health. Right now, any kid that falls within that in Cowlitz County is shipped out of our county. Either, I think the closest drug rehab is up in the Seattle area or maybe north of that. And there's only one mental health facility over in central Washington. So some kids get shipped to Utah. So we're just exploring to see if you can convert some unused space on that to keep some of those kids local and not ship them out. And I don't know how that's going to work out either, because everything's expensive and that takes, because you're converting a juvenile detention center, some space of it is probably going to take Olympia getting involved and different things. But those are just a couple in the background type projects that are being worked on. And we try to update at the commissioners meeting here and there. But just some things so you know what we're looking at. I try not to keep any. My feeling is we should just be an open book. And so if I'm working on something, I'm going to tell you I'm working on it. It doesn't mean it's going to get done because things can get in the way, but those are two that I think we're looking at right now.
In continuation on that OPMA for a moment, it is almost insulting is too strong a word, but if anybody's ever tried to twist my arm or twist his arm, they'll find it's just not easily done. And that we would collude in a way that would be, that would require us to be crooks, if you will. That isn't going to happen with him. It's not going to happen with me. And there have been plenty of people asking, why do you stand for these things when you know that it brings hell and brimstone on you from people who don't understand what you're trying to say? That's just the way we are. So you've done a good job. I know it's a little self-serving commentary. You've done a good job electing me, in that I stand by what I say, and I cannot be bought. That applies over there too. Do we agree on everything? No.
I just want to say that I've been attending these meetings now for a little over 4 months, and I want to commend you guys on to what you just said. You guys have done a great job of being open and of being transparent, and by standing by your values, and it's apparent. And I understand the restrictions that you guys have with regards to the OPMA and the difficulty the challenge that presents. I just want to share two things with you. With regards to the Burma Road situation and to Mr. Farrell's comments, I have a friend who I'm just going to refer to them as a friend who lives on one of the rivers in our county. And couple floods back, she lost, well, now you know it's a female, she lost probably 50 to 60 feet of her property. And she spent hours and hours going through what you guys just talked about, the permitting process and getting permission and all that kind of stuff. And good old American creative ingenuity, she just decided that she was going to bring in some landscaping rock and put it along the edge of her property, giant big rocks. And it just so happened that the next flood, it came and those rocks just naturally fell into the river and helped, prevent the erosion of her property. So what I want to commend you guys on is that I have noticed that as things are presented to you, you don't just go with the first option. You ask questions, you want more information, and you take input from the citizens who come up and speak and give you different options to look at. And I really do feel that you guys take all those things into consideration. So kudos to you for that. With regards to the mental health facility for youth, we do have money coming from the opioid settlement. And that's also, I think, an option that we can look at if it should qualify for, drug rehab for youth. And I think that that's important, Commissioner Dahl, that you bring that point up, because I have a personal story with my own daughter who we had that situation and there was nowhere for us to take her. We called every facility in the state of Washington, which there are only 3, by the way, and we could not get her in. And we looked at Utah, we looked at Idaho, we looked at Arizona. And as we were getting ready to take her to Idaho, we got a phone call from the facility in Seattle that said that there was a bed that had opened up. the young man who was going to be taking that bed had committed suicide the night before, so he was no longer going to be there. So we got that bed. The problem was that we were only there for 10 days. And when my daughter came home, she went right back to the same stuff. So we definitely need a long-term facility in our county for our youth. Now, I've heard, it's been said that, you know, it just doesn't pencil out from a financial standpoint to do that because we don't have enough people within our county. Well, those other 3 facilities within the state, they're not being sustained by the citizens of that county alone. There are people throughout the state that are having to bring their children to those facilities. And if we have the opportunity to be that and have that here in our county, along with other economic things that we could be doing and bringing to our county, I think it's a good thing. If we can help these youth with their mental health issues, with their substance abuse problems, it's only going to help our economy in the future. It's going to help reduce the crime rate that we have. It's going to help reduce the homelessness that we have. And I think it's something that we should definitely consider. And I applaud your efforts with regards to that. So thank you.
Yeah, the commentary like this from the citizenry is a big help. Along those lines, I might ask you, did you see what Maria Cantwell is doing up in the Seattle area? I think I'll send you an email on that. I think I copied you on that. No? Yes?
It's not ringing a bell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our truth in emails is, you know, oh, by the way, that's another example of OPMA. The only time I send the commissioners a direct email is when it's an FYI. And I copy the clerk also. Some people think that isn't a reasonable thing to do because it's a violation of OPMA. At this point, I'm going to take the gentleman's approach of I build it and they can, I ask for forgiveness afterwards. You tell me what damage this caused and what violation this caused.
So I just hear you agree to push the button?
I beg your pardon?
I think I heard it. You guys heard it.
Ooh. Well, there was a tea party once.
Yeah.
T is the short for TNT, which
Yeah.
everybody knows is trinitrotoluene, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody knows. What? We got a hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if the Cowlitz County police have raised any concerns with the WATV law in regards to violators potentially not driving on streets where they're forbidden, such as over 40 mile an hour, rather over 35 mile an hour streets. I was wondering if you've had any complaints on that.
I can tell you on the county that we've allowed that in some areas, and I can tell you the last time I talked with the person that did that, he no longer works for us. He went to work for Woodland, but he said they had no complaints. He truthfully thought it was going to be an issue before they approved it, but once it was approved, the people were responsible with it, and we have in the county, unless something's changed recently that I haven't heard, John, we have had no issues with it. It's been handled legally, and they've done what they were supposed to do.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything either, and I think this is an example of how many of us exceed the speed limit on the freeways and we don't get pulled over. I mean, at some point, that ordinance is intended to prevent harm, and if no harm is happening, most
right.
people will be quiet.
Yeah, well, it just kind of confuses me because I'm up here in Tootle on Sightly Road, which according to the map is a 40 mile an hour road of that map I reference is it tells you where you can and cannot drive these ATVs, WATVs rather. And Sightly Road is a 40-mile-an-hour road. Well, speed limits over 35 on roads aren't supposed to allow ATVs on those roads. And I mean, since the ATV law was passed, I've had issues with those utility terrain vehicles, UTVs, which are side-by-sides, dirt bikes, ATVs. They run up and down Sightly Road all the time now. And I've called it in every time I've been in the area and have had that issue because these things aren't quiet vehicles. They aren't designed with the same muffler systems or pedestrian guards as regular vehicles. And so I'm not quite sure why you guys haven't gotten those complaints forwarded through the representative with the county police.
Well, we may have to amend our statement to say we've just gotten one.
I would hope so.
But I think this is an example of why it's so difficult to pass any ordinances, because people will tend not to look back and say, okay, if I'm going to go from a stretch on this side of the town to a stretch on the other side, simply because it's a 40-mile-an-hour thing, but I don't want to have to trailer my WATV. I'm going to drive very slowly and carefully and make sure I cause no disturbance at all. That would probably meet the kind of standard of decency, I suppose, in some way. But most people will tend to abuse it. Now they'll run back and up and down, and that becomes a problem that you've seen, I think. I don't know how to deal with that except you start to give citations.
Yeah, I mean, if you're speeding on the road or you're doing things, whether you're in an ATV or a car, it's not, you can be cited for it.
Yeah.
It's the behavior that needs to.
And the fact is, I understand the spirit of an ATV user potentially driving on a road that they're not supposed to, but taking it slow, keeping their cautions on, maybe having a warning triangle on their vehicle, that kind of thing. But yeah, like you said, these users aren't driving up and down this road for simple transportation needs. I've seen there are several farmers that live on Sightly Road, myself included. And we do have tractors and ATVs that do drive up and down this road for agricultural reasons. But since this law was passed, I mean, people are going up and down this road like it's Riverdale Raceway. They just treat it like a playground. And I used to go out for walks on this road all the time. And now I can't because these vehicles, they don't have fenders. They don't have wheel guards. They don't have anywhere near the same muffling system as traditional cars or even cars you might see out at the at Riverdale or on the drift track up there, Spirit Peaks. And so I can't get out on that road anymore. And what I've been quoted by the police department is they're spread so thin that they can't enforce ordinance on that road. And I've had to explain even to 2 deputies what the speed limit requirements were in the WATV law because they assumed that any county road meant any county road without regard to the speed limit. So
one thing you might do is write a letter to the sheriff and explain to him your concerns and ask him if he's willing to help you stop that practice.
I have, and the simple response is that we can't be bothered. We have higher priorities than enforcing these traffic laws out here in Toutle.
That's a specific answer you got from Brad?
That's not a specific answer I've gotten from Brad, but that's the position of the department.
Well, the kind of Brad is the one who would set the policy. So anyhow,
I would,
I would try that. You know, the deputies are going to respond to whatever Brad says.
right, but I mean, the point is I mean, I kind of understand their point is that they're spread too thin to enforce this law. And if the law is unenforceable, and that means that within lower population areas such as my own, that traffic laws simply aren't regularly enforced because patrols are too infrequent, that, well, why should these less restrictive laws be passed in the first place? Because,
Well, what do you hope that the Board of County Commissioners can do here?
well, what I can tell you is prior to the passing of this ordinance, what was it, like 2020, 2018, something like that. I didn't have this issue with utility terrain vehicles, ATVs. There was the occasional dirt bike, but it was on you might see one every few months kind of basis. Where now, and I assume these are the quote unquote law abiding users of ATVs, they're up and down this road every day.
Yeah.
Like it's their driveway, and not a regulated county road that I'm paying tax dollars to maintain, honestly. And after it was passed, now we have this issue. So maybe you should reconsider this ordinance if these law-abiding users aren't going to behave.
Yeah, I don't think that's a little bit of trying to close the barn door, I think. And it's currently illegal for what they're doing, and making other areas illegal is, if it's not enforceable now, increasing the area on enforceability doesn't seem appealing to me.
But what you've done is state that it is legal for some of you to drive on some of these roads, and it's illegal for some of you to drive on these other roads. Hall Road is, I believe, a 35-mile-an-hour road, and I believe they can drive on that road, but they can't drive on Sightly because it's 40 mile an hour. That's the speed limit here. And the point is, clearly, prior to this law being passed, we didn't have this issue because you told people you can't drive ATVs on county roads, period. That's it. And clearly a lot of people took that to heart. They didn't. When they wanted to go to Riverdale to drive their ATVs off-road on as all-terrain vehicles, they did. And after you passed the law and stated, well, you can drive them on some roads, well, some of these law-abiding users have taken it to assume that means all county roads. And that's clearly what they're doing now. So, I mean, from an enforceability standpoint, I could tell you hire another half dozen police officers and post them out here around Toutle, around Silver Lake. But obviously those who don't want to spend the money don't want to do that. Well, especially from from higher taxed areas such as Longview or Kelso, where you're going to have more for your income. Why should you invest out here in Toutle where you're not getting as much return? So the fact is, I mean, telling people no before this ordinance was passed did have an effect. And plenty of people did follow the law. But I think you've actually muddled the waters somewhat, or muddied the waters somewhat, when you're now saying that, well, some of the roads you can drive on, some of them you can't drive on. And now it's just led to misbehavior everywhere. I mean, and I can only speak specifically to Sightly Road, obviously. That's where I'm living. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening elsewhere. I mean, why wouldn't it?
I'll have to get familiar myself with the ordinance. I don't.
Yeah, I was I was a strong supporter of the ordinance way back when, and it probably falls a lot on my shoulders for it being how it is now. Do I regret doing that with with what you said? The answer is no, absolutely not. My job is not to take a few misbehaving people and have them put the remainder of the county in chains. That's a decision I don't make. I represent 110 or 114,000 people in the county, not just you or a smaller special interest group. So I'm always going to push for moving it to individual accountability. Peer pressure is one of those things that makes a big difference. Great example is driving laws are about the same throughout all of Earth, the world. Yet there's some places you don't wish to drive on because they don't respect anything. Well, here we know that we could button everything up. I'm just not prepared to button everything up.
Well, when you say you don't speak in the interest of, for special interest groups, as I recall, that was exactly who brought the issue of it in the first place, was these same users who wanted to drive their ATVs on these county roads. So, why do they get special treatment? Why can't they take their
They don't
ATVs
get
to
special
all-terrain
treatment.
vehicle
No,
courses?
No,
they don't
have
get
to be.
special treatment. They asked for a change in the law that would permit not only them, but all the other 114,000 people in the county to drive on that.
If they made my brother has one up in Oakville, and he had to put blinkers, he had to make it legal.
Oh, those are totally legal now.
Yeah.
If you're driving your KTM on license and you're doing wheel stands on the road, that's under any ordinance, that's still illegal.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the 115, 110,000 people or so in the county, well, I think you have to exempt Longview and Kelso, where obviously they aren't allowed within city limits.
I have no control over them, and if somebody is driving on the county road, I don't ask them to show me their license where I can get their domicile and say, oh, you're not allowed to drive here because you're from Kelso or Longview and they don't allow you to drive there, so I'm not going to allow you to drive here. I think you're grabbing for straws now. I think the answer I've offered is going to have to stand.
Well, the answer you offer here is you don't want to restrict people from driving where you don't think they should drive. Yet,
Oh, did
all
I
you
really
did,
say that?
all you did was say that you rolled back a law that was already existing and had existed for decades. So, what changed? Why did this need to change? What was the motivation?
I think it's becoming a silly argument at the moment. Laws change all the time for various reasons. We could dissect everything and spend a lot of time. I think the points have been made on both sides.
I don't think you want to look at the data, Arn. I think you want to just speak for the special interest groups. Because that's who brought it to you. I'll go back to the Daily News article and read it again. What do you want me to do here? Do you want me to go throw a 4x4 in the road and tootle and say, whoops, you shouldn't have driven your ATV on my road? On this county road here, which you're not allowed to be on? What do you want me to do here, Arn?
I don't want, well, actually, I think like I've said, we've discussed it all. And there isn't anything I think that was done improperly. And I don't think there's anything that we can do moving forward properly.
We could
And I
reinstate the
think
law.
I beg your pardon?
Well, you could reconsider this ordinance that you passed. And when the sheriff told you there aren't any issues, well, frankly, there are issues. So when I come to you and tell you that there are issues, why do you choose to believe this county police representative and not someone else, not just a citizen from your county?
Mr. Chairman, we're just going around the mulberry
Yeah.
bush 1,000 times.
Around and around. It's
And this is coming from a guy who's got the Declaration of Independence behind his head here.
yeah,
We the people, huh?
exactly.
Yeah, we the people, not, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
We'll
Us,
go.
we some of the people. We some of the people. I get it. No, I get it.
Okay, we'll move on. That's good enough. We're not going anywhere with this, so we can move on. Anything else?
Wow.
So Abby, did you want to come and tell us anything about the young person's view of the world? Well, why don't you give us your particular analysis of the world?
She's putting her on the spot. I might opine here just a minute. Did any of you, I was out of town last week, otherwise I would have, did any of you attend the homeless workshop? I'd be interested in yours. Let me opine for a second, then I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Because I hear this all the time. When I saw that, I'm going, you know, homeless is the key word that attracts buckets of money right now. But homelessness is, in the way I look at it, is a symptom. It's a different problem, but we keep trying to attack a symptom. The problem is, and we've seen it, and you could run out stats. You can look at the 3 Western states, the left coast have instituted all these do no harm things and made substance abuse and everything almost non-penalized. And I think substance abuse creates homelessness. Substance abuse creates theft. Substance abuse creates breaking and entering and property damage. You know, I don't think homelessness creates drug abuse. So these arguments in these workshops drive me crazy because they're talking about symptoms just because there's buckets of hundreds over here you can get for it. So I would have liked to sit in that and see where the conversation went. So I'd be interested in your take on it, Steve, if you're willing to share.
I did see Abby's hand up.
Yeah.
Most of the discussion was a presentation by the police officers and a history of the homelessness starting back in 2015, 2017 timeframe, and walking forward step by step as what the police force was able to do. And as Supreme Court decisions came along and all of a sudden tied their hands and they didn't touch anything or do anything to anybody because they were afraid to, till they could wait and find out what they could actually do underneath the new rulings coming out of the Supreme Court. Ultimately, the ups and downs of the homelessness problem in Longview, as they worked through things, when the city council actually took action and gave them tools again to work with loitering rules or ordinances, and they couldn't be on private property unless they had permission. And it was actually the police who ultimately running homeless people off of private property, saying you can't be on private property without permission, but you can be on public property, which is how they ultimately ended up camped at City Hall, because, oh, well, that's public property. So they kind of created that problem themselves, according to what they did in their report. But when the city council actually moved forward and passed ordinances and let them start enforcing what was already on the books and some of the new ones and let them tighten up things, they started pushing back on the homelessness problem. You would almost call it harassment, but basically they kept after people until ultimately they found out that, you know, this is not the place it's okay to be. You can't be in Longview. So they ultimately were pushing them out of Longview by constantly making them move and making them move. Well, you can go to bed at 9:30, but you're going to get woke up at 6 o'clock if you're sleeping in the car or you're sleeping in a tent. They're going to wake you up and tell you to pack up your stuff and move. And then along came Hope Village. And when they went through this whole thing, I asked the chief of police in their success, what they saw as success of pushing people away from Longview and saying, this is not an okay place for you to be. I asked him specifically how much benefit he saw with the creation of Hope Village. Well, that caused a bit of a pause in everything, but basically his response was, well, there's 50 people in those houses that are not on the street. So I think that was kind of a political answer to dodge the bullet, because he didn't really tell me whether he viewed Hope Village as a benefit or a negative in his efforts and the police efforts to be able to control the homeless problem. All in all, the information was wonderful. It was a great presentation. It was very educational, but in the bottom end of it, did I see any real resolution to the problem? No. Yeah. Recently I had the opportunity, and I asked Mary Alice Wallace specifically the question of, what did Longview do to cause homelessness? What did the county do to cause homelessness? And if you didn't do something specifically to cause it, why do you feel responsible to try and fix it? Because you're not going to fix it. Over 50% of the national homeless people in the continental United States are on the West Coast. Why are they on the West Coast? They sure didn't come to Washington for the weather. No. So what brought them here? There's got to be something that's drawing them here. We got the free handouts and we got everything to do that will help you with if you come here, you know.
It's my view that this whole do no harm stuff is, and I kind of, you know, me and my colleague I get when he says we've worked on the drug problem for decades and never solved it. He's right. And I don't think we're ever going to solve it, but I think we can make it better. And we've just given up on even making it better. I mean, we help them. We give them needles. We give them places. We give them, in some cities, we give them the drugs. I don't know how that's not homicide, but we actually let them do it. And then we hold them to a different standard. Well, they robbed a store, but they're on drugs, so they can't help themselves. I rob a store, I'm in shackles and I'm in jail. You know, I think we've taken the wrong tack. We in my mind, we treat them like they're, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to disparage hospice at all, and I think they do a great service. I watched them with my wife, but we treat them like hospice patients, like they have no future, like they're terminally ill, and we just keep them comfortable until they die. And to me, that's just unbelievable.
Do you know what cures the drug problem? Every time there's a new drug that comes along, the old one's cured. Alcoholism, alcoholics, drunk driving, alcohol was legal, and we slowly but surely made it more and more penalized if you get caught drunk driving. But you can still be drunk in public. And then along came marijuana, And people stopped using alcohol so much because now they're start using marijuana, and it's gradually getting more and more potent with all of the transitions and the stuff they're growing. And marijuana became a problem, but we made it legal. So now there's an issue there. And how do you determine whether or not somebody's under the influence when they're driving? And then now we've moved on to fentanyl well, first we went to oxycodone, but now we've moved on to fentanyl, which is killing people. But again, we're not making a real effort to stop the flow of drugs into this country with an open border. And so what's our focus today? We're not focused on alcohol. We're not focused on marijuana. We're not focused on fixing any of those old problems. Now all of a sudden, everybody's attention's on fentanyl, which is killing people. Well, what's the next drug going to be? So the next new drug that comes along is going to be killing people at a higher rate than fentanyl is.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden fentanyl is not going to be a problem anymore because we got a new drug that's doing damage that we can't control.
And I don't disagree with that. I just think we need to change our tact. I don't think we're ever going to solve the problem. I totally agree with that. But our tact, if you look at the West Coast, they're finding bodies under trash up in Seattle that are down to skeletons.
Yeah.
I mean, this is insane. And we enable this stuff, and it's gotta stop.
Thank you, Governor Inslee.
Anyway, I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Commissioner Dahl, on your view of homelessness. Homelessness doesn't create substance abuse or mental health problems. Mental health problems and substance abuse create homelessness. But there's many reasons why people are homeless, to no fault of their own. Sometimes, whether they lost a spouse with no life insurance, or they lost a job, or whatever the case might be. And we're a very resource-rich county when it comes to those types of situations. We really don't have anything for the substance abuse or the mental health, so to speak, long-term rehab. One of the things that I took from the meeting was that the police chief said that they really didn't start to make headway until they actually stopped the enforcement part of it and started to collaborate with outside resources. And they started to work with people who had the resources and the wherewithal and the knowledge to take it from the enforcement part to help them with other areas of their life, whether that might be get a driver's license so they could get a job, find temporary home, those types of things. And that's when they really started to see that they were making a difference, was when it wasn't just the government trying to solve the problem. They got other entities, outside entities involved in helping them. And that was when they started to see results. But to the conversation with Mr. Farrell, he is correct, and you are correct in the fact that we as a government tend to just react to what's in front of us, and we deal with it and we throw money at it and hope that it's going to solve the problem, as opposed to taking a strategic and having a strategic response to what we want our county to be. What's interesting is one of the comments that the police chief made was that they just started to notice that all of a sudden they weren't seeing the homeless people that they had seen before. Like, they just all of a sudden disappeared. And he heard that some of them had gotten a job in Montana, and so, somebody was doing this, but for the most part, some of them just disappeared. What I find interesting about that is that part of the reason some of them just disappeared was because they were imported into our county. Okay, for the last 4 years, I have worked within the homeless community as what we call a transient bishop within my church. And that means I help the homeless people who live in our county, whether they're members of our congregation or not, it doesn't matter. And I can't tell you the number of times that I took people to the bus station in Centralia at 10 o'clock at night, or bought them a train ticket, got them a hotel, at the Motel 6 in Kelso, to make sure that I could get them at the train station to send them back home, whether that was California, Salem, wherever it was. And I asked them, how did you end up here? Well, the majority of them said that they ended up in Portland or in Seattle or whatever the case might be, and that they were brought here because we have the resources to help homeless people. So that got me thinking, is that what we want to be known for in Cowlitz County, that we're the place that we have resources for people who have these issues? You know, Cowlitz County will take care of you if you're homeless. They'll give you a needle if you have an addiction. And I feel like the fact that we've just been reacting to these things as they're placed in front of us with no response long-term as to what we want to be, where we want to be. And if we don't know where we want to be in 10 to 15 years when it comes to this situation, we never know if the first step that we're taking is the right one in the right direction. And the reason that I found it interesting that the police chief said that they just disappeared is because we can't just look at the government to solve all of our problems for us. We can't. And the police chief wasn't aware. I went through and took inventory of the people that I sat and that I personally helped buy tickets, whether it be plane, train, automobile, whatever the case might be, to help them get back home. In the last 16 months, I helped 13 transient people leave Cowlitz County and go back home. Now, the police chief didn't know anything about that. And he doesn't know anything about it because sometimes people do things not to be in the limelight, not to get their name in the paper, but because it needs to be done and it's the right thing to do. And we, as a county government and as local government, can really utilize the resources that we have within our county and people who do things not to get their name in the paper, but to do it because it helps humanity and it's the right thing to do. That's one of the first places I think we need to start. And I'm not talking about giving people money, but I'm talking about collaborating with the citizens as to what we can do together as people, as citizens of the county to help solve this problem. Because we definitely, the one thing that the government can do is help bring in people who can create facilities, rehab centers, long-term institutions that will help people with the substance abuse and the mental health. That's one way that we can help ourselves. And if we're going to bring people into Cowlitz County for that type of stuff, I would say that that's a viable reason to bring somebody to our county, not because we have needles and we have resources for homelessness. So, but it was a really good workshop. And I think that we were all in sync with our thought process on the homelessness situation.
Good. Appreciate you indulging me. I think these kind of conversations are, I mean, I know they make some people nervous, but I think sometimes you just need to peel back the layers and just have them.
Can you summarize what you think the board might do, if anything?
I think to the best of our ability, if we have the ability to stop the enabling type activities, that we should do that. I don't see how that's helping people. It might feel good. You're just going to love your neighbor till they die, but it doesn't help them. And I gotta think you should have more respect that this person can have a life, but you got to be honest with them. You got to be straight with them. And sometimes you got to be tough with them. I think to me, that's the responsible way to handle it. Just not to, as I say, treat them like a hospice patient and just keep them comfortable till they die. That makes zero sense to me. And I don't know how much authority we have sitting here to do some of that, because a lot of what happens comes out of Olympia, and we'd have to be willing to go against some of that stuff and be, as we have been in the past, threatened with all these things if you don't do this. But
Yeah, I guess I'm old enough to have heard. I'm older than you know.
yeah,
I've heard,
I'm going to hang on to that for at least 6 more months, 7
Yeah.
more months. Yeah.
the arguments are presented on many sides, and just standing back, the situation gets worse and worse. And we can't seem to educate the legislature. We can't seem to educate the public that thinks that there's a free lunch, that the money comes from heaven in some way.
Yeah.
And absent of all these discussions is a sense of the individual responsibility. We come close to it when you say we're treating them like hospice. I agree with you. That is, we demean these people. We assume that they cannot help themselves.
Right.
And so we talked about bureaucracy, and I'm pretty sure if we took a look at things, we're in the way there. We're really enabling, and most of the programs I see fall in that category. And then it goes to what you said. We like today we approved that CDBG grant that eventually is going to turn into Meals on Wheels. And unless we're willing to clamp down on that and turn that back to the churches, say, like the gentleman who spoke about buying transportation for any number of people to take them back home. I'm sure when he did that, he was thinking about the person, not thinking about himself as being a grand master of things. Just like you said, it's the right thing to do. And as long as we continue to support programs, and we do it here, that say it's okay to expect less from people in family. And I've heard all the arguments, well, some people don't have a family. And I say, we cannot make decisions for the oddball pathological case. If you take a look at CPS, I think most people who deal with CPS don't have a good feeling about them. Because fundamentally, for CPS to be successful, it says the state has more interest in the well-being of the child than does the family.
Yeah.
If anybody believes that, I'd be surprised.
No, and I totally agree on it. I think most of the time, you put government, however you, just that big label is the problem. It is the problem. And the solutions really, and I'll just, I think it's Matthew 12:34-8, where basically Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Basically he's saying, you're responsible for taking care of your neighbor. To me, I interpret that as I need to be honest and stuff with them and treat them with respect and have expectations. It's not the government's job to do that. It's our job to do that. And we've gotten so far away from that these people are falling through the cracks, in my view, because we don't do that well enough. We have individuals that do that. I heard a gentleman come up and he's done some of that. And I think a lot of people do that individually. But that needs to be the norm, not the exception.
When there was a comment made, not sure by whom, but it was related to the attraction of Cowlitz County as a good place for homeless to come to because all the resources. We have daily a view of that same effect on the news when we look at the border to the south. 50 years ago, we had things like the Becerro program, and then there are arguable issues on it, but we didn't have the kind of issue we have now because everybody knows when you come over on this side on the border, you get free stuff that's beyond the imagination of the local people in their particular area. You build it and they will come. If you build it and it is free, they will absolutely come in droves.
You know, one of the things they talk about, America was built on immigrants, and I agree with that. But you think about the first immigrants, when you think about Ellis Island and the people coming through, they came here for an opportunity. They didn't come here for a handout. America provided an opportunity, and they were expected to, this is America. This is how we work. You're coming here. This is what it is. Now it's, you come here, we give you money. We've morphed it into this nonsense that eventually, if we don't get it in control, we'll end up destroying our country.
Hello. Um, just listening to what you're talking about, all these illegals coming in from the southern border and the northern border. Anyway, a lot of it, well, it's to do with trafficking, and every county, every small community across America has a shadow government, and people are disappearing. And I do mean people. Doesn't matter, you know, who you are, male, female, child, adult, teen, whatever. Anyway, all this is happening. They're sending military age people up, and these children that are coming up with them, they're not keeping track of anything that's going on. But it's just really a sad day. And the regime, not government, the regime that we're under control of right now is the main traffickers: human trafficking, sex trafficking, organ harvesting, labor, you name it, and that's it. And a side note, different than that, driving around Kelso and Longview, I don't know who's in charge of the roads. Is that Public Works?
Depends
Well,
on the
it
jurisdiction.
depends. If it's, yeah, county, it's our public works in the county roads, and each city has a road department.
Okay,
I
because,
assume they call it public works.
thank you. Because, I mean, I drive a vehicle, it's like a four-wheel drive. And if I had my little car and was driving it, it would probably tear it up, because when I first moved to Longview some years back, I had my little Honda. And within a year of moving over there, I had to have my axle, my right front axle had to be completely taken care of. And that cost me quite a bit of money. And anyway, since then even, and I've moved, but nevertheless, it's like the potholes everywhere, the roads, almost anywhere I go, they're terrible. I mean, it's like going four-wheeling in town. Okay, and it's just nasty. It's like, what is happening to the money? And then they talk about painting roads and stuff. And where I live, they're constantly repainting the parking lot lines. And it's just ridiculous. And it's like, why don't they check out the materials that are in the paint, so something lasts longer? Because in other countries, they do the painting and it's supposed to be guaranteed to last a long, long, long time. And it's just disgusting that we have to do this, and then it can cause injuries to some of us, which it has. And it's just really sad. But back to the other, it's the government, and some of these people that are disappearing, they're getting stolen. They're right up being stolen. And that's where it has to do with the shadow government. But nevertheless, for the moment, that's all I have to share with you. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've provided some sound bites for the paper today, so we've done our job. Anything else? We appreciate you hanging out with us for a while today and listening to us. It's our chance to actually, this is our chance to interact, so we kind of enjoy it actually. With that, oh, and we changed people over here. You snuck right in. I didn't even notice.
I didn't notice either.
Yeah.
Oops.
You'd have think she'd tapped on the shoulder. Man, they just behind her back. We just don't know what's going on around here. With that, thanks for participating. We are adjourned.